Hello and welcome to another reading vlog. So this week I am just reading whatever I feel like. It's a mood reading week. I apologize, my thyroid's still playing up, so my voice is a bit odd. But I popped into my library and I just sort of grabbed whatever caught my eye that I was interested in. So it's not another reading only new releases vlog, but as I said, there'll be no DNFs in my reading vlogs from this point on, so you'll only see them at the end of the month. But let me tell you about, Sylvie's gone, so I'll move that back over, the books that I have read so far. So I'll start with Anna by Mia Oberlander. This is a graphic novel. I will show you some of the illustration style before I talk about it. So they're mostly done in very primary colors. So this is a book about tall chicks complaining endlessly about being tall chicks, and one of the characters hoping that one of her bonded pair of parakeets would die so that the other one would maybe love her. There is also an on-page animal killing of a dog. I severely dislike this book, severely. I have given it a 1 star, like the feeling was visceral. I'll start by saying the illustration style really isn't for me. It feels a little juvenile. I hate the font. I really don't like it. And I don't understand why you just can't choose a font that is very eligible rather than this, once again, kind of primary school cursive. The story has no plot really to speak of. The characters are not likable. It really wasn't for me. I would say read it if you like tall, whiny women and rudimentary, primary colored drawings. I don't know who would enjoy this, honestly, but yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea. The next book I picked up is Gossamer by Lois Lowry, and this is a middle grade book, and it's about these sort of fae, fairy-like creatures that are responsible for dreams and nightmares. In this book, you follow one of those fairies called the Littlest One, and she's on the good guys team in that what they do is they go around touching objects that belong to humans, and they get imprints of memories from those objects, and then they spin them into dreams to give to the humans. Conversely, on the opposite team, you've got, what are their names again? Synesthetes, and they dispense nightmares. And in this book, you're focusing on an elderly, childless woman who has decided to foster a very angry 8-year-old boy who has come from an abusive home. And it sort of looks at their burgeoning relationship and how these beings try to help protect these humans against the more, I guess, sinister, dark fairies, but also human nature. It's very whimsical, but it also has a lot of dark themes because you do find out what was going on in this boy's home, and you can see how it has affected him and his own behavior. But really the star of this story is the elderly woman who has so much love and patience, and just the way she responds with loving kindness to this boy's outbursts and skewed way of thinking because of his upbringing is just so sweet and tender. I would say read if you like stories about loving foster carers, the film The Borrowers, and collecting mementos. I gave it 3.5 stars. And then we have Spoilt Creatures by Amy Twigg. The cover caught my eye. There's a pair of boobs on there. I was like, oh, okay, you're coming home with me. This is a book about a woman who breaks up with her boyfriend, and she ends up joining a women's cult, and that women's cult turns very Lord of the Flies. I did like the writing style. The issue I had with this book, I've given it a 3 stars, middle of the fence, because I felt like this book really straddled the fence between litfic and thriller. It never really went enough either way, and because of that, it just felt very in limbo. It does include some violence, it does include some sort of internal reflections, very litfic style, but because it didn't go full thriller and it didn't go full litfic, I was left a bit blasé about it. But I would say read it if you like the imagery of broken fingernails, hungry women, and infighting. Now, it does say that it is a book about female rage, but it wasn't really giving that sort of righteous, justified female rage vibe, so keep that in mind. Hi, sweetie. Hi. Hi, you're gonna put your little, she's got, Sylvie's here, and she's got her little tiny paw. Oh, hello, darling. On my leg. Oh, you're just gonna sit on my lap. That's okay. We can do that. You can sit here. The next book I picked up is Psychedelics, The Revolutionary Drugs That Could Change Your Life Guide from the Expert by Professor David Nutt. I think the cover is super cool. I love the pinks and the blues, very eye-catching. So this is a book that looks at the possible therapeutic, medicinal, holistic uses for psychedelics. So not just psilocybin, which, as you know, huge advocate for. It helped with my anxiety, depression, PTSD, and OCD immensely. And I do use it once or twice a year in heroic doses to keep that in check. But it also looks at, this book also looks at the other drugs such as LSD, MDMA, ketamine, ayahuasca, a whole slew of psychedelic drugs, some I've never even heard of before. So it lists a lot of current studies and the experiments and the results, but it also looks at some of the negative side effects. It talks about bad trips. It shows, what really fascinated me was it was showing how these drugs affect the brain, which I found absolutely fascinating. So once again, I was mostly reading this about psilocybin because that's what works for me, and I have no desire to try out these other drugs. I'm not really a drug type person. I was led to psilocybin out of necessity and on my doctor's recommendation, believing it could help with a lot of my conditions. I'm also on the autism spectrum, and she believed a lot of my other autoimmune conditions could be helped by lowering the amount of stress and anxiety and fear and all the things that were being triggered in my body on a daily basis. And she was right. So what I found really fascinating here is it showed that that psilocybin lowers the functioning of some areas of the brain, and I believe it was called the DMN, and that is responsible for feelings of guilt, depression, OCD, addictions, anxiety, eating disorders. So by muting that, it diminishes those conditions. It also talked about its effect on serotonin. It was also really fascinating to read how it increases neural connections, especially to parts of the brain that perhaps didn't have those connections before, and also with neuroplasticity. So it increases that, which is fantastic. So I learned a lot of things about how these substances actually alter your brain and your brain chemistry and your mood and your consciousness and your beliefs and your behaviors. I like here that it also includes things on, if you are going to take drugs, here's a guide of sort of the sensible way to partake in drugs. So it'll say, get your drugs tested. If you can't, try a small amount, wait a few hours to see how you feel. Don't mix drugs, don't take sedatives or opiates to come down afterwards. Have a friend who's not using to keep an eye on you. I think that is good to have because, like I said, it also talks about the possible negative effects that can happen when you take drugs. It talks about common myths, which ones are true. Like with LSD, there's so many, you hear them all the time. Oh, if you have LSD, you're going to kill yourself because you're going to think you can fly and all these things. Same with MDMA, the horror stories of that young girl who drank too much water whilst on MDMA and died from that. But like I said, it's also talking about how they're currently being studied and implemented. In Australia, we've already, I think, psilocybin is definitely underway with therapy in a therapeutic sessions to treat people with PTSD, depression, anxiety, that sort of thing. And I think even maybe MDMA is also scheduled as well. So they're starting to look at all of these, and obviously they will commodify them. They will package them up in pill form and charge you probably an exorbitant amount. But if these work better than the current pharmaceutical drugs, yay. And if that's how people can access them, yay. Obviously, I would hope in the future that I could end up microdosing, so I won't have to take heroic doses and have these massive trips once or twice a year to keep up the sustained mental health and general well-being benefits that they bestow me. I would love to just do that where I don't actually feel that I can't forage enough to microdose. So that is my hope for the future, that these treatments that have been shown to have immense benefits for these conditions are widely accessible and hopefully affordable. I'm assuming because we live in Australia that a Medicare rebate would come into effect for some of these drugs. Like I said, at the moment, to participate in these trials, they're only selecting a few people, and if you want to pay for these treatments currently, I think it's something ridiculous, like 18 grand. I think Medicare does compensate maybe 8k of that, but you're still out 10k out of pocket, so that's not feasible for most Australians. I believe other countries like Canada are also doing similar studies and trials at the moment. But I did enjoy this. I found it was easy to read, and it was interesting to see and learn about the other drugs and how they're utilized and what they might be helpful for. But yeah, as you know, psilocybin changed my life, saved my life, and if future generations have access to these substances that can also change and save their lives, wonderful. So I'm glad like the stigma of these previously illicit drugs is slowly being taken away and they'll become legalized. And like I said, I think it's important too, this book does state that being used in a setting with trained therapists that can help you, I think is very vital, especially if with things like PTSD and trauma, things might come up that would be alarming if you were on your own to deal with them. Whereas if you have help on hand, there are people there who are trained to help guide you through the trip and then to help you integrate what has occurred during the trip afterwards. So I think using them in this way too is very helpful. And as always, I would never recommend to try drugs on your own. Have someone there that you feel safe with and trust to take care of you when you try anything for the first time. And as I said, always try small doses to begin with and work your way up. With psilocybin, I think I tried 1 gram and then worked my way up until I think the most I've taken is about 6.5 grams. So well done. If I was going to rate it, I would probably give it a 4 stars. Like I said, it's still very science heavy in terms of talking about the scientific studies and things of that nature, and obviously about how the brain works and how the drugs affect certain parts of the brain and why is that beneficial or not beneficial. And it does mention that psilocybin so far is like the only drug that has not been associated with any deaths and is not addicting. So Psychedelics by Professor David Nutt, would recommend if you're interested in this topic. The next book that I picked up is Galatea by Madeline Miller. This is a itty-bitty novella that is based on the Greek mythology of Galatea and Pygmalion. So basically that mythology, you have Pygmalion, who was an exquisite, very talented sculptor, and they created this statue that was beyond beautiful, and the gods brought it to life and it became his wife. So this is showing them and their relationship in a bit more of a modern kind of feel. It was definitely giving, there were so many other books that reminds me of, basically you have a woman who is kept by their husband and is medicated and sequestered in the home, and the husband is very controlling and basically just uses the woman as a vessel for his desire and obedience, and they have a child together, and she decides, no, this is not going to continue any longer, and this tyranny that you are inflicting ends with me. So it was very quick. I listened to this one on audiobook. I think it was only like 45 minutes, but fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. 4.5 stars. So pick it up for an excellent quickie. And if you like books about Greek myths and subjugated wives outwitting their controlling shitty husbands. I am currently listening to, because the audiobook became available faster than the physical copy, Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books by Kirsten Miller. And this is about a town where Lula Dean is this very outspoken conservative woman who believes that books should be banned from libraries, and has also set up her own little library with books that she feels are appropriate and suitable for society. And then what happens is one night, a very stoned teenager teams up with an angel, and they go to Lula Dean's carefully selected books, and they take off the dust jackets and put those dust jackets on other books that Angel has selected. And then you see members of the town who unwittingly go to this, curated library, pick a book up thinking it's one thing, and then finding out it's another, but how that book then is exactly what they needed. So the first story You've got a young girl who is reprimanded at her school for wearing tank tops, even though boys are allowed. And this is still something that happens here too. My daughter is not allowed to wear tank tops on casual clothes days at her school, but the boys can. What fucking bullshit. And she protested by wearing tank tops or leggings to school and was subsequently suspended. So her mother got what she thought was a book on the Southern Girl's Guide to Social Etiquette, you know, how to be a Southern lady. But inside the book was a book, I think it was something like The Rise of Female Power or some feminist novel, and it sort of radicalized her. There's another story where a woman was married to this guy who was a neo-Nazi, and he was starting to influence their son with his own ideals and beliefs. And this husband also severely restricted and monitored what his wife had access to and wanted to keep her contained and in the home. So he went to this library, got her this book, which was supposed to be about some frivolous, you know, stay-at-home housewife from the 1950s. But lo and behold, inside was the diary of Anne Frank. So I am thoroughly enjoying it. It is a lot of fun. It's got a very humorous tone to it, whilst it's also navigating more serious topics. So obviously it's going just through a whole array of themes and subjects. There's racism, there's misogyny, inequality, the list goes on. So I'm loving it, and I will continue on with that one. And then the last book I was going to pick up for this is Rebel Rising, a memoir by Rebel Wilson. If I decide to DNF it, then you won't hear me talk about it now, but these are the last two books that I am picking up for this particular vlog. Like I said, I don't see myself DNFing Lula Dean's little library of banned books because I'm finding it thoroughly entertaining, even in audiobook format. But we'll see with this one. I haven't started it. Are there pictures in here? I might just show you. Oh yes, there are. So there are some pictures in here. So that's fun. I love it when books have mixed media formatting. Oh, God bless her. What a darling. So I'll give this a little read and see what it's like. Like I said, I find her incredibly funny, and I do like her in any movie she's in. Even if the movie sucks, I just like her. So we'll see if I like her memoir. But those are the final books for this vlog, and I'll see you guys when I have finished them.
Yeah. A little cat party. That would be very cute. I'm sure you do. Yeah. Oh. Oh, and so cute. And silly. This is a cat party, guys. Who would a party be without bubbles? So right here. They're all right here. The exact same spot. Well, these two were the same spot. Bubbles.
Okay, so I finished off Rebel Rising by Rebel Wilson. Look, I picked this up because someone at book club said they really loved it. I am not someone who cares about celebrities and celebrity culture and the lifestyles of celebrities whatsoever. I just don't care. It doesn't interest me. This book is more heavily about that. If you want to read about what the life is like of an A-lister, this is for you. But for me, it just felt a bit tone deaf. Rebel was talking about how she was lower class and poor, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot afford to send your children to a private girls' school if you're in a low income bracket. It is just not possible. They were middle class. Lower middle class, yes, but middle class. And she did have a lot of privileges, which I don't think she really checked that well. She's incredibly intelligent. She has a law degree, as well as being an incredibly successful actress. There was her sort of queer identity that came about as well in the book, and her process of becoming a single parent. So it was interesting, I guess. It's written in her vernacular, so it sounds like Rebel, the person we've seen on screen. Look, I'm really happy for her, other people's successes. I hope everybody on earth gets to achieve their dreams and has financial security. So yay for Rebel, but in terms of an enjoyable read, it wasn't really wasn't my cup of tea. I did read it all the way through. She definitely does spill the tea on Sacha Baron Cohen, so that is in there, and I buy everything that she said. I don't think she's bullshitting about that. So yeah, if you like celebrity memoirs, then give this a go. But yeah, for me, I just know, unless it's maybe Angelina Jolie, I'm probably not interested in reading about the life of a celebrity. But yeah, in the words of a lot of Aussies and Rebel, she'll be right. Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books by Kirsten Miller. So once again, this is about a small town becoming united after being divided over the banning of books. I would say this focuses on a lot of social issues and themes. Mostly, I would say it's about politics, so Democrats versus Republicans, and I will say that the Republicans are kind of vilified in this. There was a lot about bigotry and racism and white supremacy and misogyny and feminism / witchcraft. There were some funny moments in this, so there was a bit of humor thrown in there, some levity. And I found it very interesting to see which banned books they placed with which character and how it helped them. But personally, I felt this book went on for way too long. It dragged. It did not need to be as long as it was. It got to the point where I started thinking, how much longer has this got to go? When are we gonna wrap this up? But overall, I gave it a 3.5 stars. It was enjoyable. I did listen to this one on audiobook and found it easy to go along with. I would say read this if you like books about banned books, small southern town dynamics, and ejaculating penis cakes. I would say my favorite character was the old lady who made a giant dick and balls with spurting cum. Frosting. I loved her. She was awesome. So I did manage to squeeze one more book in here because it became available on audiobooks, and this is The Lake House by Sarah Beth Durst. And this is about 3 girls who arrive at a summer camp on an island, finding out that the house has been burned to the ground and there is a dead woman lying in the grass. It's not really summer camp, but a fight for your life camp. This was an okay read. I gave it a 3 stars. I think having the main character have extreme pessimism and anxiety was a choice. She was an incredibly cynical person, and I know that they're trying to show that that can also be a superpower, but being in her POV was exhausting in a way. I found that even though the girls are meant to be fighting for their life, this was more about a circle therapy session with these ladies. They were just sitting down and talking about all of their issues and all the shadow work they need to do and their family trauma. So it was basically like a kumbaya therapy session. And for me, it ended up leaning, this thriller wasn't incredibly thrilling. There were a few fraught moments, and there was a little bit of a mystery over what was going on, what happened to the people who were dead at the camp. There is a random cage and hole in the ground, so very ominous with that. What was in the cage? What was it holding? This does end up becoming a paranormal, which I was not getting from the synopsis and the image, and I don't feel like it was a strong point in the book. But I would say read this if you like girlies bonding over trauma and basically speed running their survival skills. And there's also a lot about the nature element because they're on a lovely piece of land with lakes and trees and birdies. But I will now go through the books in order from worst to best. So we have Anna by Mia Oberlander, which I gave a 1 star. Rebel Rising by Rebel Wilson, which I'll probably give a 3 stars. Spoilt Creatures by Amy Twigg, which I gave 3 stars. The Lake House by Sarah Beth Durst, which I gave 3 stars. Gossamer by Lois Lowry, which I gave 3.5 stars. Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books, by Kirsten Miller, which I gave 3.5 stars. Psychedelics by Professor David Nutt, which I gave 4 stars. And my favorite read of this reading blog, Galatea by Madeline Miller, which I gave 4.5 stars. Let me know what your favorite read of this week was, and until next time, stay wild, Star Child.